Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Rovers Report, where I know we've left you for a long time. A lot of you probably haven't even noticed we've been gone, but we are back, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Tom once again. It's just sort of been a bit of a hectic few months for the both of us. Couple that with, as I'm sure you guys are aware, Rovers haven't been the most inspiring of teams to watch or follow in the last couple of months. So, the motivation to record these hasn't been at its highest, but like I said, summer's approaching now. Hopefully Rovers, we're in a bit of a weird situation where we're probably not going to go down or go up. But we're looking forward to getting back into this. So hopefully you guys are excited about us returning. And what better place to start, Tom, than a cold, wet Tuesday night game against our old foes, Wycombe Wanderers, where, we sort of symptomatic of our last couple of months. It was a pretty drab affair. And yeah, if we start there, just for me personally, I was watching it on the old iFollow, and we started off fairly well. Collins looked sharp. Something I've got down in my notes is that Coburn, he looked back to his usual self in terms of fitness and his sharpness as well. But yeah, the game trailed off, and in a pretty typical Wycombe fashion, they sort of, I think it's unfair to say they shithoused their way to a win, but they won the game quite comfortably without being spectacular. We'll touch on Barton's comments throughout the video, a couple of other players, maybe their absences, but just as a general thought, what did you think of the game?
Pretty much agree with you there, mate. I think there was definitely some chances in the first half. I know Coburn had a couple of 1v1s. The second one, when he was played through by Collins, he really should have scored, to be honest. I think that's 9 games without a goal for him now, after starting so well. So hopefully, he picks back up. But Wycombe, obviously, they're up there in the playoff spots or just outside because they are a clinical team, and that was just shown by so I think it was obviously the difference in efficiency up top that really did it, to be honest.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's something else I've got down in my notes, which is a shame. Is last season and the start of this season, we've always been prone to an error. More so this season, our defence has been particularly poor, up there with one of the poorest in the division. But when our attack's firing on all cylinders, you can get away with it. We can outscore teams. We've proven that. It's been a feature of Barton's teams throughout the years. But as has been the case since Christmas and was the case last night, Bogard makes that mistake. Unfortunately, they score from it, and our attack wasn't quite up to their normal standards, and that's cost us the game. I think I said that Collins started well. Barton clearly didn't think he had the best of his games, and I would agree with that. But yeah, it's odd, isn't it? We were so used to seeing Coburn and Collins, easy, just sort of seems easy for them, scoring, assisting each other, nice free flowing football, and that seems to have just left the squad, and it's quite worrying because Sinclair's chipped in with a few. I know Marquis is still scoring, but yeah, I think last night sort of showed how when they aren't firing, we're normally going to concede a goal, and that's what happens.
Exactly, mate. And that's what's been happening over the last couple of months, to be honest. As I mentioned, Coburn had scored in 9. I know Marquis before the brace on the weekend, he wasn't. I don't think he'd scored many since that brace against Charlton. So, um, the goals have certainly dried up recently. I think, as you said, coupled with that sort of shaky and leaky defence, we very much were on relegation on 9. But
Sorry, just say that
I
again.
think
You just
if
cut out a little bit there.
yeah, I was just saying that it was very much relegation form for two
Mhm.
months, wasn't it? And then we picked up recently, but it feels a bit more like, I don't know, one step forward and one step back. We kind of haven't really progressed at all. And so, we're here, I know we have a fairly tough sort of fixture list in April, but I think we will stay up. It's just loan players and trying to figure out the team for next season might be a little bit difficult, to be honest. And that's something we'll touch upon later.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think something important from last night as well was Barton's comments post match about the pitch and Collins as well. Speaking about how we're pretty much winning the pitch for the first goal, despite Bigard's pretty poor touch, and doesn't deserve a Welsh call up. So that was pretty odd comments, to be honest.
Yeah, I think if we touch on the comments about Collins first up, it just feels the word for me is unnecessary. I agree with what Barton says. He says, "Look, I'm the type of man that's going to tell you if you're good and tell you if you're bad." However, you don't need to say that about the Wales call up. And then when he said, "Was he even playing out there?" There's so many better ways of managing that. If you're the coach of the team and you see your players is having a bit of an off day, just say, fair enough. We know how good Aaron Collins has been for us, and unfortunately, at the minute, he's not performing at those levels. And say, maybe even, it's nothing wrong with going as far as saying tonight he wasn't good enough and it was a poor performance. I'm sure Collins would take that. But, if I'm a player and I'm hearing my manager say, "Oh, were you even out there tonight?" You just think it's just a bit of a snide comment, isn't it? And
It's a classic Jekyll and Hyde, really, isn't it? That we've seen before from Barton. So it's kind of baffling that he said it. I think without Collins, we'd be in a relegation zone. It's pretty obvious. So we'd be close to the relegation zone. He's won us points many times throughout the season. So, I think it's pretty.
Yes. Yeah, it's just an odd one, isn't it? Because I think he keeps harking back to that, and fans hark back to the Luke Thomas debacle where, oh, Joe Barton put a rocket up his ass and it worked. Maybe it worked, but he didn't go on to be unbelievable for us. And I think you'll see a lot more success with sort of an arm rounder player, especially Collins. He's just come off the back of not being called up to Wales. I'm sure he's disappointed. It just, illogical for me. You make him captain for the night, and then you go and say that after the game, and you think, it doesn't take much for someone like Collins, who, yes, his form's gone down and his value's probably decreased over the last couple of months. But a few more of those comments, and he starts to think, hold on a minute, I want to. There's plenty of managers out there that will, treat me like a star. That'll be nice to me, and still give you the rocket up the arse without publicly calling you out. And it's embarrassing for a player. That I wouldn't want that. So yeah, it was odd, wasn't it? And then as you said, moving on to the comments about the pitch, I think. He always seems to have an excuse, doesn't he, Barton? Whether it's a referee, injuries or the pitch. And I think sometimes he just has to hold his hands up and either say, Wycombe came with a better game plan for us, or, my tactics were poor today, or simply the players just didn't play well enough. We take that. Going off on a rant about the pitch and how he's going to have to recruit differently over the summer. It's a load of bollocks, that. You think about the amount of teams in this division that play on a pitch. Granted, our pitch isn't at its best. There's plenty of teams that play on a pitch as bad as ours and still perform at good levels and can still get the ball down and play. So for me, it was just, clutching at straws. I think he's running out of excuses, and it was odd for me. I don't know what you thought about that, mate.
Yeah, he's pretty much the same again. It's just odd, the ground stuff have clearly struggled with the in the summer as well. We had incredibly dry, hot summer, followed by, I think, fairly wet and cold January, and December before that. So, I think they've been struggling with that, and obviously they're not intentionally going to make the pitch the way it is at the moment. It's Bogard, as I said, there's no real excuse for that sort of touch. Like, it wasn't as if the ball was played. So I think it's just another excuse, as you said. There's sort of a litany of excuses that I sort of wheeled out quite often. And so I just think it's disappointing to not really own up to not being at the races on a certain day. So I think it's a tough one, but at the end of the day, I think Rovers are in a better place. Kind of volatility that we see in presses and stuff doesn't really help our cause at times.
Yeah, it's kind of what Fleetwood fans warned us about, isn't it? And similar to what you said, the Jekyll and Hyde is, when we're flying and we're doing well, these comments are fantastic. It's sort of, you love it. You think, oh, these outlandish remarks that he makes, you can throw them in other fans' faces. We all loved it when he said, mark my words, we're going to get promoted. And you take that soundbite and it looks brilliant 6 months later. But then it works the other way, doesn't it? He says these comments, it riles the fans up, splits the fan base because you've got those defending him and those who don't like him or don't like his comments. And then you also get the attention from other fans. If we've had it multiple times where he's basically done their pre-match speech for them. I think it was Burton. So he's saying something about, these guys are one of the worst footballing teams in the division. They come to our place and they beat us, and it's like, well, thanks for that, Bart, and you've just given them an extra 50% motivation. It's getting interesting now because we had the what would you say, the downs when we went down, obviously. Then we had the massive highs of last season. I think, have we hit 2 years yet? Or we must be getting close to that now.
Yeah, I think it was 2 years last month.
Yeah, we can get a real big picture of what sort of manager he is. And, I think he's definitely put us in a better position than when he took over. Maybe we'll touch on that more on Friday. Before we move on to another topic, is there anything else you want to add to that, mate?
No, mate. I think that's pretty much it from me. I think it'd be interesting to touch on sort of the team that he can put out next season, sort of where we need to strengthen. There's only, I think, 10 or 11 games left. So you're speaking about that on Friday. We're like London buses on this channel, aren't we, mate? So yeah, I think thing to do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, if we move on to our final topic, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. If I was being questioned by the interviewers like Barton is, I don't know actually if you would admit this, but for me, one of our biggest problems, and probably a root of our downfall since Christmas, has been the lack of roster in Finley. Either through absence of injury or suspension, means that we've played large parts of these last couple of months without those two. I don't think it's any coincidence that our early season form has waned since they've been out the team. And the way I'd describe it is they're sort of our metronome. Those two keep us ticking over. You obviously have Coots in there last season. He's played a smaller role this year, but those two, they create the tempo, don't they? Everything goes through them. They stop attacks coming our way. And also they're two very vocal figures within the team. You look at our side now and you sort of think, where does the leadership come from? So for me, I think just the lack of Rossiter and Finley, I don't think it can be underplayed. I think they are massive, massive assets to our team. And, they're the engine room of Bristol Rovers. And without them, I think we've really struggled.
Yeah, the metronomics. So yeah, I agree. I think especially Rossiter, we've really missed him. I think he's been out since was it the MK game or the Charlton game? And we have really missed him. That sort of bite in midfield, but it's more of a kind of composed bite in midfield, if you can call it that. I think, yeah, he just kept things ticking over, didn't he? Whilst I think Finney's slightly more attacking and Coots is just a lot slower on the ball. So I think we have really missed Rossiter in that sort of, not as a pivot, but as a sort of linchpin holding midfielder. And so it's kind of disappointing because that sort of spell we had before Christmas outside the playoffs, he was a very pivotal figure in that. And so, whether we get a good spell out of him, I'm really not sure because he's been injured twice already for fairly lengthy periods of time. So it's not. I think it's not just a correlation that him being absent has coincided with the poor run of form. So I think the sooner we can get him back, the better. But I'm not. I
just repeat that. Sorry, mate. Just cut out again.
There hasn't really been an update on his progress, has there?
Yeah, no. I think, to be honest, mate, unfortunately for him and for us, he's going to be one of those players, isn't he, that you can't rely on for 30 odd games a season. And I think it's a really good point what you said, actually. I know I used the word metronome, you used the word linchpin. Both of those share similar qualities. And I think the problem with our team at the minute is, you look around and you think last night, it was Connolly, Gibson, and Quansah. All of those are young guys. I'm sure Quansah's and Gibson potentially have got leadership skills within their age groups, or they did do. But it's a completely different game. And in front of them, you've got Bugard and Ward, both of them new to the team. Bugard obviously is a younger player. Ward has the experience, but he's only been here for 3 or 4 months. Not necessarily knowing the way Barton wants to play, not necessarily comfortable with the players around him. Importantly, the players behind him, they probably haven't built up a relationship yet. Whereas when you have someone like Rossiter or Finley in there, Finley's played with Connolly. They played all of last season and then the start of this season. Same with Gibson. They've been training with each other week in, week out. And then, our other players on the pitch, you got Sinclair, Gordon, both of those two great players in their own rights, but not necessarily leaders. Aren't going to give you that bite when you need it. And then, you've got your attackers where that's not traditionally a position you look to say, if we've got a tough game, get in amongst it and get the players revved up for it. They're more there for the creative side of things. So you take out Rossiter and Finley or Coots, and it just really lacks that bite. And I think yesterday's the perfect example of it, where you're playing a Wycombe team that are full of experienced pros. What you need there is a bit of sort of nous within the middle of the park. And I think Grant actually had a good game, but it's frustrating. Not Grant, sorry, Ward. That's my bad. His first name's Grant, isn't it?
Yeah, just Grant. It still is under contract. He hasn't played for a while.
That's my bad. I'm showing my rustiness there, mate.
Yes, last time you played is probably the last time.
Exactly. Need to brush up on my knowledge, mate. Otherwise, I'll have people getting at me. But yeah, I think unless you've got anything else to say, mate, I think we just wanted to hop back into this, didn't we? Just a nice short, brief video, but we'll get back into the swing of things. And any parting comments, mate, or anything you want to just add in?
Nothing from me apart from touching on sort of the team for next season, where we need to improve. I think it's fairly obvious, but sort of a little video on that sort of augment what we've talked about this evening.
Yeah, that's perfect, mate. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on once again, mate. And I know we make a lot of these promises, don't you? It seems to be the start of every video. I'll go, right, we're back, guys, and I promise you we're back for good now. I'm not going to make that promise now, but I'll just say I hope we can. So thanks, guys, for watching. If you're new around here and you haven't seen us, we've been away for a while. Give us a subscribe, give us a like if you enjoyed it, and make sure you put some comments below as well. What sort of stuff you want to see from us? Critique our opinions if you want. Let us know if you disagree with us, because a lively debate's always a good debate. Thanks for coming on, Tom, and we'll see you guys later.